The washer was making a noise that no washer should make. Machine 18 thumped against the concrete floor in a slow, uneven rhythm, as if something inside it had learned the wrong song. The sound traveled through the laundromat and mixed with the rattle of carts, the hiss of a dryer vent, and the faint hum of the vending machine near the entrance. Above the machine, the flickering fluorescent tube above machine 18 blinked twice, steadied for a second, and blinked again. I was off shift, carrying a plastic basket of work shirts, when I saw the woman beside it. She wore a burgundy blouse under a charcoal jacket, a navy skirt, and practical shoes that had clearly been chosen for walking rather than posing. Her hair was pinned back on one side. A slim folder rested on the folding table beside her, next to a paper cup of coffee that had gone untouched. She had the posture of someone who had spent the morning being listened to by people who had already decided what they thought. She opened the washer door, reached in with a pair of rubber gloves, and pulled out a long strip of pale fabric caught around the drum. It was not clothing. It was a fabric banner printed with the words, "Community Laundry Project," in blue letters. The banner had wrapped itself around the agitator and dragged 3 towels into the same knot. She tugged once, the machine groaned. She stopped, looked at the ceiling, and noticed me watching. "If you are about to say I should have read the instructions," she said, "please understand that I have already had that conversation with myself." I set my basket on the nearest table. I was going to say machine 18 has a reputation. For what? Eating the most inconvenient item in the room? Her eyes moved to the banner. It has taste. The corner of my mouth lifted. That is one word for it. She reached for the banner again, but the fluorescent tube above us fluttered and the washer gave a sharper jolt. I raised one hand. "Before you pull harder, turn the breaker off." I already did. The washer is still humming. She looked toward the utility corridor. "That is not the breaker I turned off." "Probably not." "Probably is not my favorite word today." Mine either. I did not touch the machine. I followed the conduit with my eyes, checked the nearby emergency disconnect, and saw the first sign that the problem was larger than a trapped banner, a faint scorch mark around the junction box behind machine 18. I worked with high-voltage systems for the city grid. My job involved substations, industrial controls, and equipment that could turn a careless decision into a police report. A laundromat was not my current assignment, but electricity did not care whether it lived beside a transformer or a row of dryers. "I am Adrian," I said. "I am an industrial electrician. I can look at the circuit, but I will not open an energized commercial panel without the proper shutdown and authorization." She studied my face, then my scuffed boots. "You say that like you have had to explain it before. Usually to people holding a screwdriver. I am holding a laundry banner. That is why I am optimistic." She glanced at the folder on the table. The label read Thomas Laundry, LLC. Her hand rested on it without opening it. "Camille Thomas," she said. The name was familiar. A local business article had described her as a public relations consultant who had bought a neglected laundromat near the harbor. The article had called the purchase a bold reinvention. The photograph had shown her in a pale suit beside a ribbon-cutting sign that never appeared again. "You are the owner," I said. "That depends on whether the city lets the building keep its doors." Before I could ask what she meant, the front door opened. A man in a gray municipal jacket stepped inside with a clipboard and a second person carrying a sealed inspection case. Camille closed her eyes for half a second. "Ms. Thomas," the man said, "I am Daniel Hayes with the City Safety Division. This is Rosa Kim, Utility Systems Engineer." Rosa nodded to Camille and then to me. "We are here to review the follow-up photographs from last week's preliminary inspection." Hayes set the clipboard on a folding table. "The main service panel and the secondary panel remain out of compliance. The report notes exposed copper, water intrusion, mismatched breakers, and a grounding system that cannot be verified from the records supplied by the previous owner." Camille's fingers tightened over the folder. I supplied the seller's affidavit, the prior inspection summary, and the closing documents. The affidavit is not a current electrical certification, Rosa said. Her tone was precise, not cruel. It tells us what the seller believed. It does not establish that the present system is safe. Hayes opened a page. You have 24 hours to keep the public out of the utility corridor and 5 business days to submit an emergency repair plan. If the plan is accepted, the city will schedule a shutdown, a licensed electrical inspection, and a final hearing. Until then, the affected machines remain offline. Camille looked at machine 18. 5 business days? For the plan, Hayes said. Not for an unlicensed overnight rebuild. Rosa added, do not let anyone tell you that a temporary patch is the same as a permitted repair. It is not. The fluorescent tube flickered again. This time, Rosa looked up. Hayes handed Camille a written notice. The building is not being condemned today. The business may operate only in the areas cleared by the notice. If the service equipment arcs or the city receives evidence that the restricted area was entered, we will order a 24-hour shutdown while the utility connection is secured. And if the work is not completed, Camille asked, you will receive a formal hearing date. The license will be reviewed under the Commercial Safety Code. You will have the right to present evidence and appeal the decision. He said it like a procedure, not a threat. That difference mattered. When Hayes and Rosa left, the door closed with a soft bell. The washer stopped thumping. The silence felt larger than the machine had. Camille placed the notice beside her coffee. The bank meeting was at 9. I stayed near the folding table. For the repair loan? For the working capital loan. I had a presentation, a financial model, a community use plan, an address that was supposed to make me look as if I knew exactly what I was doing. You looked as if you knew what you were doing. That is because the dress was doing excellent work. I nodded toward the banner. Community laundry project? 3 evenings a week, reduced rates for local families, free machines for the shelter across the street, and a small training program for young adults who need paid work experience. The lender liked the plan. Then the safety notice arrived. She said it evenly, but she kept smoothing the same corner of the folder. Why buy a laundromat? I asked. Because I spent 10 years helping organizations explain what they cared about while standing outside the decisions that mattered. I wanted one place where the work and the promise were in the same room. That answer was too carefully made to be casual. She looked toward machine 18. And because my mother used to take 2 buses to wash our clothes after our building's machines broke, I remember how much a working washer could change a week. The central problem was no longer a woman in a dress beside a broken machine. It was a woman who had placed her savings, her name, and a very specific promise inside a building that had been sold with a story about safety. I looked at the scorch mark again. Would you like help finding a licensed commercial electrical contractor for the emergency plan? I asked. I can inspect what is visible and explain the technical issues, but I cannot perform or certify work outside my authorization. Camille met my eyes. You are asking instead of taking over. I am trying to learn quickly. She took out her phone, opened the city notice, and read the section about authorized contractors. Yes, help me build the plan. I will decide who signs it and what the business can afford. That is a workable arrangement. Do not call it a favor. I was going to call it a very small emergency with excellent paperwork. She almost smiled. You may stay. I called Fiona Alvarez, a licensed commercial electrical contractor whose work I had seen on 3 industrial sites. Fiona was direct, expensive, and allergic to vague descriptions. Send photographs only from the cleared side, she told me over the phone. No one opens that panel until the utility disconnect is verified and the city gives us written access. Camille gathered the papers while I photographed the exterior labels and conduit from the public side. She created a folder for the city notice, a second for the purchase records, and a third for the lender. When she found the seller's affidavit, she placed a sticky note on the signature line. What? I asked. The affidavit says the grounding system was checked in 2018. The closing statement says the building received a service upgrade in 2021. Those dates should not disagree. They may not. We need the permits. Then we find the permits. That was the first time I saw the quality beneath her polish. Panic had arrived, but it had not taken the chair. At the end of the afternoon, Fiona sent a written estimate. The plan required a utility-approved disconnect, replacement of the damaged service entrance, a new grounded panel, circuit identification, moisture remediation, and a final inspection. It was not a cheap fix. It was also not a mystery anymore. Camille read the number, then opened her banking app without showing me the screen. "I can cover the permit in the first materials invoice," she said. "The rest depends on the lender." "Then the first deliverable is not the repair. It is a complete packet that lets the lender see the repair." She looked over. "You really do think in folders?" "Folders are just small rooms for facts." That may be the least romantic sentence anyone has said to me this year. I am off shift. My romantic vocabulary is undergoing inspection. This time she laughed. We worked until the laundromat closed. She made a list of every affected machine, its circuit label, its average daily revenue, and the customers who depended on it. I drew a clean one-line diagram from the visible service entrance to the restricted panel, marking every place that required licensed access. I did not touch the locked equipment. I did not pretend a sketch was a permit. At 8, Camille brought 2 paper cups from the cafe next door. One was black coffee. The other had tea, lemon, and a little honey. "I guessed," she said. "You guessed correctly. I have a public relations background. Guessing correctly is how I pay rent." We sat at the folding table with the fluorescent tube blinking above machine 18. She opened the lender's application. I checked Fiona's estimate against the city's written requirements. Together, we found that the application had a missing line for temporary customer access during the repair. Camille called the lender before the office closed. She explained the notice, the contractor estimate, the staged repair schedule, and the community program. She did not ask for sympathy. She asked whether the loan could be reviewed against the documented safety plan. The lender requested a contractor license, the city notice, the purchase documents, and proof of the first materials payment. Camille wrote the list down and assigned each item to a folder. "You have just turned my crisis into a scavenger hunt," she said. "A scavenger hunt with signatures? The worst kind." The next morning, Fiona met us at the service entrance with a lockout kit and a printed authorization from the utility. She was joined by Rosa Kim and a city electrical plans reviewer named Malik Grant. Hayes remained outside the restricted corridor. Camille stood beside me while Fiona reviewed the access order. "I want to be clear," Camille said. "No work begins until the utility disconnect is confirmed. The permit application is accepted, and Fiona identifies which tasks belong to her license." Fiona gave her an approving glance. "That is clear." We entered only after the utility representative verified the disconnect and Malik recorded the equipment condition. The main panel was worse than the photograph suggested. Water had entered through a cracked exterior fitting. The neutral bus showed heat damage. 2 breakers were the wrong type for the panel. The grounding conductor was present, but could not be traced to an approved electrode system. I measured what I was authorized to measure under Fiona's direction. The results went into a signed field report. Fiona prepared the repair scope. Malik marked the parts of the plan that required a permit revision. Camille did not hover behind us. She sat at the doorway with the invoice folder and asked questions that made the technical record stronger. "If we move the washers to the north wall, does that change the load calculation?" "Yes," Fiona said. "The new load schedule will show it." "Then the floor plan needs to match the electrical plan." "Correct." Camille marked the floor plan. I looked at her. "You are enjoying this." "I enjoy knowing which line can betray me later." "That is not a normal hobby. Neither is high voltage." By the 3rd day, the emergency permit application had been accepted for review. The city did not promise approval. It issued a written schedule, utility isolation on Thursday, removal and replacement on Friday and Saturday, rough inspection on Monday. and final inspection on Tuesday. The laundromat would remain open only in the cleared front section, with machine 18 and the dryers on the south wall shut down. The lender approved a conditional bridge after receiving Fiona's signed estimate and the city's schedule. The money went into a restricted business account and could be used only for the listed repair invoices. Camille read the approval letter twice. I still have to make payroll. Then we protect the cleared machines and publish the reduced schedule. She opened a blank notice on her laptop. I can write the customer message. I can help you make the hours fit the load schedule. We worked side by side at the folding table. She wrote that the south wall would be unavailable for several days, that no customer should enter the utility corridor, and that the community program would begin after final clearance. I checked the hours against the stage shutdown. She changed one sentence because it implied the machines might reopen before the city approved them. Never promise a light before it is connected, she said. That is a good rule. It is also a good rule for people. I looked at her. She returned to the notice. Do not make me explain that one. Thursday morning brought the scheduled utility shutdown. The lights over the front half of the laundromat stayed on. The tube above machine 18 went dark, and the machine door received a red service tag. Camille watched Fiona and the utility crew secure the disconnect. She held the access log on a clipboard and asked each worker to sign in. The previous owner, Victor Dalka, arrived at 10 with an attorney and a copy of the old affidavit. I sold the building in good faith, Dalka said. Camille did not raise her voice. Then the records will show that. His attorney asked for a private conversation. Camille looked at me, then at her own attorney, Lena Ortiz, who had arrived from the lender's office. Do you want me to stay? I asked. Yes, Camille said, but Lena will handle the contract questions. I stayed by the utility entrance while Lena reviewed the affidavit and the closing documents. She found that Dalka had attached a 2018 inspection to a 2021 service upgrade statement without including the permit number for the later work. The city records request was already pending. The dispute did not vanish. It became a documented claim, with notice to the seller's insurer and a request for the complete permit history. Camille could pursue recovery after the business was safe. The repair could not wait for a lawsuit. Friday and Saturday became a sequence of signed handoffs. Fiona's crew removed the damaged service entrance. The utility representative verified the new disconnect. The city inspector confirmed the grounding path before the wall was closed. I assisted with measurements, conduit routing, and load calculations under Fiona's supervision. Every material invoice matched the restricted account. During the first afternoon, Camille discovered that the temporary customer notice had been printed with the wrong return date. She did not blame the volunteer who had formatted it. She sat beside him at the front desk, compared the city schedule with the printer proof, and made a corrected version in large, readable type. Then she walked through the room and replaced every copy herself. You are allowed to delegate, I told her. I know. You are not required to carry every page. I know that too, she held up the corrected notice. But if I am asking customers to trust a schedule, I want to see the first one posted correctly. She taped it beside the front window. A woman waiting with 2 children read the notice and thanked Camille for explaining the reduced hours. Camille listened to the woman's question, checked the community schedule, and wrote the first available evening on the back of a receipt. When she returned, she found me tightening the cover on a junction box under Fiona's direction. Did you just recruit a customer? I asked. No, I gave her a date. That is how recruitment begins. Then you should be careful. I may give you a date next. The comment was light, but the work beneath it was not. She was learning which promises she could make and which ones required another signature. I was learning that helping did not mean filling every silence with an answer. At the end of the second day, the crew found a damaged section of conduit that had not appeared in the seller's photographs. Fiona photographed it, added it to the change order, and paused the work until the city reviewer approved the revision. Camille called the lender, sent the updated estimate, and asked for written confirmation before authorizing the additional materials. The approval arrived after dinner. No one cheered. Camille simply printed it, signed the authorization, and placed it in the repair file. That was anticlimactic, I said. You mean properly documented? Exactly. She opened the paper bag she'd brought from the cafe. I saved you the corner piece of the sandwich. The corner has the most structural integrity. I knew your profession would eventually explain your eating habits. Camille ran the front half of the laundromat, answered customer questions, approved the revised schedule, and brought sandwiches for the crew before anyone asked. She labeled one bag vegetarian and another for people who say they are not hungry until the second half of a crisis. Fiona lifted the second bag. Which one is mine? You are the second half, Camille said. Fiona nodded. Accurate? On Monday, the rough inspection passed with 2 corrections. A conduit strap needed to be moved, and the circuit directory required larger lettering. No one treated either correction as an insult. Fiona fixed the strap. Camille replaced the directory. I checked the load schedule against the revised machine placement. The fluorescent tube above machine 18 remained dark, but the rest of the room felt less temporary. That evening, Camille brought tea to the back office. She had changed from her work clothes into a simple gray sweater and loose trousers. She placed my cup on a saucer before setting down her own. The lender wants a customer forecast for the first month after reopening, she said. You have one. I have hope. They want numbers. Hope can be converted into numbers if you count the cleared machines, the reduced hours, the shelter agreement, and the pre-registered community nights. She opened her spreadsheet. You are telling me that optimism needs a column. Every respectable optimism does. She added the column. On Tuesday morning, the final inspection was scheduled for 9. At 8:45, a notice appeared in the city portal. The hearing had been moved to 4 that afternoon because a previous owner had submitted an objection about the emergency permit. Camille read the notice without speaking. Do you want me to attend with you? I asked. Yes, I want your technical testimony if they ask for it. I will present the business records and the customer plan. If the hearing becomes public? I will decide what I want said. You answer only for the work you performed and observed. Understood. At 9, Rosa completed the final inspection. The new service entrance passed. The grounding readings were within the required range. The circuit directory matched the load schedule. Machine 18 remained offline until the city issued written clearance because its motor had suffered damage during the original fault. Rosa signed the inspection report, but did not remove the service tag. The electrical system is cleared, she said. The individual machine still needs a vendor test. Camille nodded. Then we do not reopen it early? Rosa looked at me. A lot of people would argue at this point. Camille has a better relationship with fax. Fax send fewer angry emails. The vendor arrived before lunch, tested machine 18, replaced a damaged bearing, and certified it for limited operation. The repair invoice went into the same restricted account. When the machine completed an empty cycle without vibration, Camille stood beside it and listened. The fluorescent tube above machine 18 flickered once. She looked up. That is not part of the machine test. No, I said. It is part of the building. Fiona checked the ballast and found a failing connection in the lighting circuit, unrelated to the repaired service panel but still covered by the maintenance plan. She replaced it before the hearing. At 4 o'clock, the final hearing began in a municipal conference room. Hayes chaired the technical portion. Rosa presented the inspection report. Fiona submitted the contractor's license, permit number, scope of work, and final invoice. Lena Ortiz placed the seller's affidavit, the city records request, the lender's restricted funding letter, and Camille's customer plan into the official file. Camille stood at the lectern. I bought this laundromat because a working machine can return time to a family, she said. I did not know the previous owner's paperwork was incomplete. Once the city identified the risk, I followed the written process. I hired a licensed contractor, obtained the emergency permit, accepted the shutdown, paid for the repair through the documented account, and kept the public away from restricted equipment. She placed the customer schedule beside the safety plan. The business is not asking for an exception. It is asking to operate under the clearance already issued, with Machine 18 limited to the vendor certification and the community program beginning only after the city confirms the final conditions. Dalka's attorney argued that the city should suspend Camille's license because the original purchase documents had been inaccurate. Camille waited until he finished. If the seller's statement is inaccurate, that is a matter for the insurance claim and the contract review, she said. It is not evidence that I ignored the safety notice. The records show the opposite. Hayes turned to me. Mr. Bennett, can you confirm the technical sequence? I answered from the field report. I described the visible scorch mark, the utility disconnect, the measurements taken under Fiona's supervision, the new grounding path, the corrected load schedule, and the final inspection. I did not claim more than I had personally observed. Did you perform the repair independently? Hayes asked. No, Fiona Alvarez's licensed firm performed and certified the work. I assisted with measurements and documentation within the assigned scope. Camille looked at me once. The look was not gratitude for being rescued. It was recognition that the record was holding. The hearing officer reviewed the documents for nearly an hour. The final decision was not a dramatic apology. It was better than that. The city approved continued operation in the cleared areas, authorized Machine 18 under the vendor's limited certification, required a 30-day follow-up inspection, and confirmed Camille's right to appeal any future suspension through the written process. The seller's objection was placed into the contract file. Lena sent notice to the insurer that evening. The lender converted the restricted bridge into the approved working capital facility after receiving the final clearance. Camille did not get every dollar back immediately. She did not get the previous owner to admit fault. She got a safe building, a legal operating path, and the ability to pursue the remaining claim without risking her business. The next morning, the laundromat reopened under reduced hours. Camille taped the city clearance beside the front desk. She placed the community schedule beneath it. The banner that had been trapped in Machine 18 was cleaned, dried, and hung above the donation box. I arrived with 2 coffees and found her checking the new light above Machine 18. "It is not flickering," she said. Fiona fixed the connection. I know. I watched her sign the work order. "You are becoming dangerous." "I have learned to read a signature." She took the tea from me. "The first community night is next week. Then we should check the schedule." "We should eat first." "That is a strong operational recommendation." She placed a paper bag on the folding table. Inside were 2 sandwiches and a pastry cut neatly in half. The 6-week review arrived with the first full month of operating records. The community nights had filled every available machine. The shelter across the street had sent a letter thanking Camille for the reduced rates. The lender approved the next phase of the program. The city completed its follow-up inspection without issuing a new restriction. The seller's insurer accepted the claim for formal review. Lena continued the contract process. Camille kept the original affidavit in a locked file, not because it controlled her future, but because it belonged in the record. I continued working on the city grid. My hours remained unpredictable, but I stopped pretending that a schedule was the same thing as a promise. When I told Camille I would meet her after a shift, I texted if the shift changed. When she needed a decision made, I asked whether she wanted technical input or company. She did the same for me. One evening, after the final customer left, we stood beside Machine 18 while it completed a quiet cycle. The fluorescent tube above it held steady, casting clean light across the folding tables and the blue letters of the community banner. Camille rested one hand on the washer lid. "You know what I thought when I first saw you? That I had chosen a disappointing laundry basket? That you were going to tell me how to fix everything?" I was tempted. And then? Then I remembered the best way to work a seized bolt. She looked at me. "You don't force a seized bolt, you work it loose," I said. "You apply the right pressure, protect the threads, and stop when the tool is no longer doing good." That sounds like a rule for more than metal. It has survived several inspections. She smiled, then turned the light switch off and on. The tube responded without a flicker. Want a better look? She asked. I looked at the repaired machine, the clean banner, and the woman who had built a public promise out of a private fear. I already have one, I said. At the washer. At the work. She considered that, then slid the folding table 2 inches away from the wall so we could walk past it without bumping our knees. Come help me with the next schedule, she said. That is a very serious invitation. It has a spreadsheet. Then I accept. 6 months after the first inspection, Thomas Laundry ran 4 community nights each week. The lender had released the second phase of funding. The city had closed its follow-up file. Camille's claim against the seller was still moving through the insurer's review, but it no longer held the business hostage. The laundromat had become brighter without becoming fancy. The folding tables were repaired, the chairs matched. A small shelf held detergent donated by local customers. Machine 18 carried a new service label and worked without complaint. Camille had also changed the room beside the office into a small training space. On the wall, she had framed the first customer schedule, the final clearance, and a photograph of the repaired service entrance. The community banner hung above them. When I arrived after a late grid inspection, she was teaching a teenager how to read a maintenance checklist. She finished the explanation, handed over the clipboard, and walked to me in full view of the room. You are early, she said. The city grid had a cooperative evening. That is rare. I documented it. She took my hand. Her palm was warm from the dryer room. I saved you a chair. The chair was beside the folding table, not in the corner. A second coffee waited on the saucer. Above machine 18, the fluorescent tube shone steadily. Camille looked at the light, then at me. You can stay for the next class. Do I need authorization? You need to sign in. I picked up the clipboard. I respect a documented welcome. She laughed and opened the door to the training room. The light did not flicker. The machine did not thump. Nothing in the room needed to be forced. The end. Core lesson. Healthy love does not take control of someone's crisis. It respects boundaries, brings honest work to the table, and gives the other person room to make the final decision. Green flag. Adrian asks before acting, stays inside his professional limits, and supports Camille with records and competence while she protects her own business and voice. Like and subscribe. If you were Camille, would you keep the laundromat open under reduced hours or close completely until every repair was finished?